So first I want to check out Force Gaming's video. A decade of bad MMOs.
One thing us MMO fans know all too well, it's disappointment. Frankly, looking back on the last day.
Yeah, disappointment, 100%. That's one word to summarize the genre and how everyone feels about it.
Decade of the genre, it's been mostly one letdown after another. We have had a few games stand out from the crowd and make a name for themselves for sure, but otherwise there have been far more failures than successes in this corner of the games industry. I think mostly I'm just disappointed at how stagnant the genre has felt over these last like 10 or so years. So stagnant in fact that a bulk of the most popular MMOs today are the exact same ones that were the most popular 15 to 20 years ago. It's like nothing.
Yeah. So, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV, old school RuneScape, although that game's actually like grown in popularity. ESO is still quite popular. What else? Guild Wars 2. Whenever you do like a top 10 MMOs video, I think every top 10 MMOs video for the past 10 years has had pretty much the same games on it.
Thing has changed and there's been little advancement, which just
BDO has been like fairly consistent on those lists as well.
Blows my mind, if I'm being honest. The MMO genre was trucking along through the 90s and early 2000s. We saw quite a lot of diversity in these games with some great advancements from one to the next. Then, of course, World of Warcraft hit the scene in 2004 and broke into the mainstream. Yes, sure, the general public vaguely knew about games like EverQuest prior to that, but that was mostly through news reportings about how evil the game was. But when WoW hit, MMOs finally arrived into the public's consciousness as like a thing that people knew lots of other people enjoyed. The genre continued steaming forward from there. We saw quite a few MMOs released between 2004 and 2010. In fact, I still to this day remember those early to mid 2010s very fondly, when WoW was arguably at the time at its peak and everyone else was looking to grab a portion of that audience.
I tell you what, the best time to have been an MMORPG content creator would have been from 2004 to about 2012, 2013. It seemed like every year from 2004 to 2013, there were so many games coming out. It was constant. A lot of them didn't survive, of course, but from a content creation point of view, I think the MMO community was so much more positive about MMOs. Everyone was more optimistic. No one was jaded. What did we have? Like some good games from the mid 2000s. We had WoW. We had Guild Wars 1. Guild Wars 2 was like 2012, 2013. We had Lord of the Rings Online. Age of Conan. Age of Conan was pretty big when that came out. There was like a lot of side MMOs. Dark Age of Camelot, EverQuest. I think they were a little bit before WoW. Aeon was huge. Rift was a big one. Warhammer Online, yeah. Neverwinter. SWTOR. I remember when SWTOR came out, that was for a while seen as like a big competitor to WoW for the people that liked sci-fi. Arcade, yeah. Dungeons & Dragons Online. Perfect Worlds, yeah. There was a lot of MMOs that found a big audience from 2004 to like 2012 because they were games that were similar to WoW, but they were played by a lot of people that couldn't afford WoW's sub fee, which was a lot of people. Like I remember back in high school, I tried playing The Perfect World because I couldn't really afford the WoW sub fee and my mum didn't let me resubscribe sometimes.
We were getting several new MMOs every single year as a result. This was a great time for me personally. I mean, sure, all of these games were not bangers. I'm not looking back with rose-tinted glasses here. They weren't all great, and most of them didn't stick around, but there were a few gems in there that I thoroughly enjoyed. For example, in 2010, we had Dragon Nest and Vindictus, both games I had a lot of fun playing. Then in
Dragon Nest. Is that game still going? I remember covering it years ago. It must have been 7 or 8 years ago. I remember it had good combat. I know Vindictus is still good, and Vindictus is still fun to this day, like in terms of just pure combat. I don't know if you can still play Dragon Nest though. Although I heard there is a Dragon Nest 2 in development. I heard that not too long ago. There is a sequel to that coming.
2011, we saw the release of Rift, DCUO, Star Wars The Old Republic, and Terra. I played most of those as well. In 2012, we got Guild Wars 2, which is a game I still play to this day, as well as The Secret World, another game that really innovated and brought something fresh to the genre. 2013, we had Defiance. That was a lot of fun. Marvel Heroes, Neverwinter, which I absolutely loved, besides the cash shop.
I think after 2013, pretty much the only decent MMOs that released, BDO, Lost Ark, ESO, maybe.
Then, of course, there was old school RuneScape, and then Final Fantasy XIV saw A Realm Reborn that year. And then in 2014, holy crap, what a year that was, with the ArcAge beta, unarguably the best iteration of that game. There was Elder Scrolls Online, which is another game that I still play every single year. Black Desert Online, I was absolutely obsessed with for quite a while. And then both Firefall and
BDO makes me so depressed. From 2016 to 2017, that was like the most fun I ever had in an MMO. Unbelievable fun with BDO. And whenever someone tells me, "Oh, Peon, go back to BDO and revisit it," I'm like sad, and I kind of don't want to do it because I know that the game will never be what I remembered it to be. It's like playing it now would almost soil the good memories that I had back in the day. It will make me depressed because I'll just think, fuck's sake, it was so much better before. There was less classes, it was simpler. Like, you didn't have to be full maxed gear. There was a great PvP scene. I miss it so much.
WildStar, both of which I also played a real lot. All
F's
of that
in the chat
in
for
a single
WildStar.
year. 2014, man, that was a jam-packed 12 months of new MMOs. Let me tell you, I had a blast. And I recall during those years just being so excited at the steps and evolutions that these games were taking. And I just assumed back then that this trend would continue going forward. And like 5 or 10 years down the road, we would continue getting more new, interesting twists, takes, and advancements on the genre. Sure, I expected many of
I think we all had that assumption. It was like you'd look at all of these amazing games coming out like one after the other and you'd think, wow, if MMOs are this good now, can you imagine 10 or 20 years into the future? I remember thinking that for World of Warcraft. Like when World of Warcraft was at its peak, Wrath of the Lich King, I was thinking, man, if MMOs are this good in 2008, can you imagine what they're going to be like in 2025. Yeah.
of them would flop as many prior had. I figured a few would stick around, right? Right? But no, that's not what happened. There has been a handful of new MMOs in like the past decade that have done decently well, but most of them haven't. Like we got Albion Online that launched in 2017, and that's actually still going quite strong.
Yeah, Albion's doing pretty well. Albion's definitely secured itself like a solid audience. That's been one of the few in the past decades to just have a solid player base and kind of grow over time.
It's a contender in the top 10 of this genre. But beyond that, I mean, I guess in 2021, we had New World, which showed a lot of potential, and it was fun for about a week or two. And then in 2022, yeah, we got Lost Ark, which was also fun for about a week or two, up until you hit the pay to wall that kicked in at Endgame. And I mean, that's kind of everything. It literally, like, there's 3 new MMOs that are even remotely noteworthy over the course of these past 10 years. So yeah, I'm a bit disappointed, to say the least. And when I look at the next decade of upcoming MMOs, at least the ones that we know about that are currently in development, I gotta be honest, I'm seeing a lot of games here that are unlikely to break this trend. But there are some that have me at least a little hopeful, and that is what I want to focus on for the rest of this video. Enough of the doom and gloom. Let's talk about the MMOs that I think have the best chance of actual success and any longevity, at least for me personally, but also like thinking about mainstream. Are any of these games in the next 10 years going to get into that top 10 list of the most popular MMOs?
That's good. I need some positivity. There's a few MMOs that I'm looking forward to. Chrono Odyssey. I think that's going to be pretty good. Ashes of Creation. I'm looking forward to ArcAge 2, but I don't think it's going to be the game that... I don't think it's going to be a game for me. I think it's going to be like more small scale. It depends on the combat though. If the combat's unbelievably good, then it could still be fun. But it seems like it's going to be more of a PvE game. less large scale, less massively multiplayer. Other than that, the Riot MMO, I'm looking forward to that purely because Riot's got a good reputation. Not that I've seen any gameplay of it. That's pretty much it, really. Maybe there's another one that I'm not remembering.
Being played by a wider audience. We'll see. Just a heads up though, this list is fairly short in terms of the number of games. Okay, so let's start off with the traditional MMORPGs. These are games that are more or less following the gold standard of the genre compared to the MMO lights or the shared world games, some of which we will discuss. But as for the traditional MMOs, we're talking the bigger open worlds with many players visible at any given time in each of the zones, with the regular questing, the dungeons, the raids, etc., the whole shebang. What are the ones I'm excited about in this category? First up is Ashes of Creation. And let me just say this up front. I am far from one of the extreme fanatics for this game. I know a lot of the people in the YouTube MMO creator space have been singing its praises from the ramparts, claiming that Ashes is going to usher in the next generation of MMOs. I don't think...
I hope he doesn't mean me. He might mean me. But yeah, the Ashes community is quite fanatical. I think it's good to be skeptical, but there's like two extremes with Ashes. You're either like a fanatic or you're like a super hater. There's the people in the middle don't really talk about the game too much, so it seems like a very polarizing game. I'm not that fanatical, but I am looking forward to it.
That's the case at all. In fact, I doubt, if I'm being honest, that this game is not, let alone going to be the savior of the genre. I'm fairly confident it's not even going to...
Isn't this footage from the Alpha 1? Yeah, I think this is the Alpha 1 footage from a few years ago.
Break into the mainstream. If it does see success, which I think it could...
Oh, a bit of Alpha 2 footage as well.
It'll likely be with a more hardcore audience. Now that said, I can't deny finding elements of this game very appealing personally, and I think there's definitely going to be some fun to be had, and I'm looking forward to it. A lot of this is due to the fact that this game is pulling direct inspiration from the likes of ArcAge, which in my opinion had one of the all-time best open world PvP sandboxy play spaces I've ever seen. I just loved so much about ArcAge when I played it in its alpha early beta that any game even remotely modeled after it piques my interest. So development of Ashes of Creation has admittedly been on the slow side. We are now 7 years since the launch of the Ashes Kickstarter, with no full 1.0 release date anywhere in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, that's like a big problem that everyone has with it. It's like it has taken a long time. I think it's going to be another 3 years personally. What do you think, chat? How much longer do you think Ashes is going to be in development for? I think 3 years. 10 plus? Nah, no way. 5 plus? Oh shit, maybe I'm a little bit optimistic then. I do think 3 years. I'm going to stick with that.
Are nevertheless making strides in their progress though. As you might recall, the game is currently in public alpha testing at this moment. If you're willing to drop the $100+ you could start playing immediately. And while what is currently being tested is a shell of what they are promising for the game's final version, there's still somewhat of a game here to experience. Now, you can fairly easily find some in-depth coverage of the ongoing alpha, thanks to there being quite a few dedicated YouTube channels out there. And from the bits that I've seen of various videos from different creators, there is definitely something appealing here for me. Now, I did briefly play an early alpha. This was a few years ago, like 3 or 4 years ago, and I had a fun enough time with it, and the game is looking much...
I didn't know Force played the Alpha 1. I mean, Alpha 1 had dog combat. It's way better now. Actually, the main reason why I am excited for Ashes of Creation, and I still have a lot of hope for it, is after getting all the classes to level 25 and testing out all of the classes, the combat is very, very good. I really do genuinely believe that. I think it's going to be better combat than Guild Wars 2 by the time it's finished. And a lot of people consider Guild Wars 2 as having like the best hybrid combat in the genre. I think when Ashes combat's completely finished and they've got the dual class system, it will be better than that. I think it will be best in genre by hybrid combat standards. So if you can get the combat right, as long as the gameplay and the content's fun, then it's going to be a good game. So that's why I'm ultimately excited for Ashes, because I know the combat's already good.
better now than it did back then. So yes, I'm looking forward to this. Although again, I will add there is still a ways to go. My honest to God educated guess here is that we will not see a full 1.0 launch until like 2028 at the earliest. And I would consider that an aggressively positive estimate. I'd say 2030 is, and that ballpark is more likely. Although I will add that people following the game's development much closer than I have said that my projected timeline is way off, and maybe so. Check back in 3 years, we'll see where we're at that point. Either way, whenever this game releases, I will absolutely be checking it out, whether or not it has the potential to break into the mainstream, which I don't think it does. Regardless, I am looking forward to it personally, and hopefully it lives up to the hype that's been.
Will Ashes of Creation break into the mainstream? I'm not sure, you know. He does have a point. It is a very niche game, especially the whole PvP aspect to it. I think it will be a great MMO for people that liked games like Arcade and Black Desert Online. I don't think it probably won't appeal to WoW fans. I don't think they're going to like the whole open world dungeons and having to fight for grind spots. It will be a niche game, but I think enough people will enjoy it that it will have a big enough player base, I think.
Building over the course of these past 7 years. Next on my list is Arcade Chronicles. Now this one is actually slated to launch in the not too distant future. I am pumped for that. There's a closed beta test planned for later in this year, and the full release is scheduled for the first half of 2026. Now the TLDR of this game is that it is a new spin on Arcade, although how much of the original game's DNA remains, we'll have to see. We do know that there are a few big changes for starters. So the combat is now action, replacing the original's tab target. The developer has stated that their goal here is to deliver combat that rivals that of single-player action games in terms of its responsiveness and the gameplay feel. There's going to be a larger focus on PvE content. In particular, it looks like we'll be getting much more in the way of traditional MMO dungeons and raids, which the first game did have some of, but it was far from the focus. They're also putting less emphasis on the open world PvP, with instance PvP taking priority. And we know that housing is no longer going to be fully open world. Instead, they'll be going with instance player houses in specific areas, which
I don't like that, you know. Like, I think one of the best things about Arcade 1 was the open world real space player housing. It was very special, like going around the world and seeing all these houses that people actually lived at, having them be instanced. Yes, the customization potential is a lot better, but it's not the same. It's not going to feel as MMO, is it? It's basically the new Arcade Chronicles. I did a video on it a few months ago, and after researching it, the vibes I got was that it's like a fantasy new world. It's like an Eastern fantasy new world kind of thing. Like not overly massively multiplayer. Way more PvE focused. It seems like it's Arcade in name only. And when I was researching it, I couldn't find any information about the naval stuff. And like the two big things I think of when I think of Arcade, the naval content and the open world player housing. So I'm excited to play it, but I'm not sure if it's going to be a good game. I think the success of Arcade 2 depends on the combat system. If the combat's really good, I think it'll be fun.
Which means no more land grab at the fresh start of servers, which may actually be a positive change. Now, beyond those things, it does appear that at least some portion of what I loved about the original Arcade is going to be present. We're going to have the fully seamless open world. There'll be the variety of traversal options with gliders, boats, and scheduled carts that take you from one place to the next. There will be trade pack runs and caravans, which brings a whole lot of interesting gameplay. And while not emphasized, it does look like there will at least be some areas that have open world PvP. The things that we're still unsure of include whether or not they're going to have the similar crime and trial system where you can commit crimes like stealing other players' crops, and if you get caught, could be thrown in jail and brought before a jury of other players. If they're going to use a similar class system where you select from multiple trees, each based on traditional RPG roles and playstyles, with correspondingly themed skills like there's a tank tree, a brawler, a rogue, a ranger, a healer, etc. And then you pick the three you want, and that three combination determines your class. In total, that original game had 220 potential combinations and individually named classes, which was really cool.
Do you guys think Arcade is going to go with the same class system? Arcade Chronicles is going to go with the same class system as the first one? I have a feeling it's not going to. Are you guys excited for this one? Like, how excited are you out of 10 in the chat for Arcade Chronicles. Give me a rating out of 10. For me, a 6 or a 7, maybe. That's my excitement level for it.
And we also are unsure of whether or not they're going to have any of the original game's sandbox elements, like the fact that you can plant trees, herbs, and other crops literally anywhere in the world, and then like tend to it and watch it grow and then harvest it when it's ready, which was really cool. Now, however any of those specifics shake out, I am nevertheless hopeful for this game, with the main caveat that I expect monetization to not be great. I'm hoping at best in this regard that they avoid selling power or convenience and just keep it to cosmetics, although I'm really not holding.
Yeah, that's some hopium. Korean MMO only selling cosmetics. I wish. If only. Although something we have started to see, and I don't like it, is Korean MMOs do this like free-to-play, buy-to-play model where it's a real money auction house. We've seen that with a lot of NC Soft games recently. We've got it with Throne and Liberty, and then we got it with Blade and Soul Neo. I don't like it, but I would be curious to see if other Korean MMOs also implement a similar system, because players seem to be more okay with that than traditional Korean monetization.
My breath. We may very well, at the very least, get convenient sales, if not outright power. Either way, the trailers have been enticing. A new iteration of ArcAge is something I'm looking forward to. I will definitely give this game a go. And also on the plus side, it's coming out somewhat soon, which is great. Moving on to the third and final.
This is the big one I'm excited for in the short term. In the short term, this is the one that I'm really looking forward to.
Of the traditional MMORPGs on my list is Chrono Odyssey, which as of today is scheduled to release very soon. They've got closed beta testing planned to take place in the next couple of months.
Closed beta testing. Some people might have already tested it. It might be good.
Here with a full
so I've heard
release scheduled for Q4 of this year. That is right. We should be playing this in 2025, apparently. Now, Chrono Odyssey is a traditional open world MMO. The game's gonna have real-time action combat with all of the basic attack, defense, and dodge mechanics. It's also gonna have weapon swapping, which I know can be quite divisive. A lot of people hate this. I don't mind it so much. But one interesting note here is that not only will this weapon swapping mean changing your skill bars, but apparently they're gonna let you alternate holding weapons in one or both hands, kind of along the lines of how it works in Souls games, where you can alternate from having it in one hand or wielding it in both hands, and then having one hand in an offhand, which sounds like it could be really cool. They've got 6 confirmed classes, each come with 2 weapon specializations. There's the Swordsman, the Paladin, the Sorcerer, the Berserker, the Assassin, and the Ranger. They also have a rather unique mechanic where every character has access to this ability called the Chronotector. This allows you to freeze time, rewind events, and even explore other timelines. Now, they've not really provided specifics as to how this is going to be implemented in game, but it's probably going to be along the lines of like time rewind, how it works for mages in WoW, where you can go back 5 or so seconds to the literal character position, health, and mana that you had at the time. Or maybe they're going to have like a sphere of influence where there's this bubble area in which time goes backwards or projectiles get slowed. I don't know. We'll see how it works.
It's a very interesting theme, isn't it, Chrono Odyssey? I haven't really seen many MMOs with this kind of theme. It's like it's a bit like time travel-y with like void monsters and things like that. Interesting combat as well, like a Souls-like combat system, the 2 weapons, the weapon swapping. It's potential here. Depends on the scope of the game. Like from the trailers, you can't really tell if it's like an instanced MMO like Vindictus, or if it's a full open world MMORPG. I guess we'll have to wait for more info.
Beyond those things, we also know that Chrono Odyssey is going to feature an open world with seamless exploration between zones. They've got a weather and dynamic seasons that will take place. There will be open field events that they say hundreds of players can participate in. We'll also have world bosses, random procedurally generated dungeons, and large-scale realm versus realm battles, which is another.
Oh, it's open world it says open world on Steam. Okay, I didn't realize it said that.
Way to say big.
Yeah, it is.
Big group people.
When I first saw it, I thought it was. I thought it might have been like a Vindictus style game, but I'm glad it's not.
PvP. So the trailers that they've released look good, although they're clearly not representative of actual gameplay, right? I mean, this is not real gameplay here. Although again, it is a fairly decent looking and sounding traditional MMO, and it is coming out soon. I will say though, similar to Arcade Chronicles, I'm basically expecting the worst when it comes to monetization here. Though I would love to be surprised, I'm not expecting to be. Still, either way, I'm looking forward to kicking the tires, giving this game a ride around the block. Best I hope for is that it's fun for at least a few weeks to a month. Now, in terms of
the problem with Korean MMOs is no matter how good they look, like Chrono Odyssey does look fantastic, but what Force just said is absolutely correct. You don't know what's going to happen with the monetization. These Korean MMOs, they could look absolutely fantastic. In terms of gameplay, open world, all the features you want, they could be unbelievable. And then they could just be ruined by pay to win. That's the problem with Korean MMOs, man. Like, that's why I have so much hope for Ashes of Creation, because I know it's not going to be pay to win, and the combat's good. So it's just got like two guarantees for me, essentially. It's so sad.
Traditional MMOs currently in development that we know of and are going to be launching anytime soon, that basically does it. Like, those are the three that I'm actually excited for.
They claim it won't be pay to win. Yeah, but every Korean MMO says it's not pay to win. They claim that because their definition of pay to win is different than what our definition of pay to win is in the West, unfortunately. I think every Korean MMO has always said, oh, the game's not going to be pay to win before coming out, and it's very rarely ever the case.
However, there are a few MMO lights that I'm also quite keen on, and I think deserve a mention here. Soulframe. This is the next game from Warframe developer Digital Extremes. I have already played it, and although bare bones in its current implementation, I quite enjoyed it. The TLDR here is that Soulframe is like the inverse of Warframe in terms of its setting, its world, and its combat pacing. So this is a third-person fantasy action combat game. You go around fighting enemies, completing events, solving puzzles, and collecting loot. All of this is set in a world where nature has been corrupted by this evil force. You gotta fight the force back. It's basically like a bunch of aliens came down and they're polluting everywhere, and you got to push back the pollution. That's the general gist of it. Now, the early version of the game that I played, which was referred to as the Preludes testing period, it's divided into two primary sections. You've got the world, the top level, which is an open world made up of different static points of interest with roaming enemies and camps all over the place, along with the Undercity, which are these underground, subterranean, procedurally generated dungeons. And the game has you bouncing between these two areas. You're going to spend some time moving around the open world, visiting points of interest, fighting.
Tell you what, the UI looks pretty clean in Soulframe. I've actually got access to the testing of this game, and I'm going to play it later this month. I'm really excited to try it out. It does look pretty good, and Digital Extremes quite a decent developer. Hopefully it's not going to be pay to win. It probably won't be. Yeah, this could be a good one.
Groups of enemies, collecting loot, and doing objectives, after which you're eventually directed into one of several underground dungeon entrances. You go in, you move through its various hallways, which are placed together procedurally, clearing enemies, solving the occasional puzzle, collecting loot, and then eventually you find your way to the exit, emerging back into the open world. Rinse and repeat, like that is the core loop of the game. Open world exploration, doing stuff, go into a dungeon, move through the procedural place rooms and hallways, leave back into the open world, and up and down you go.
Okay, that looks pretty fun. Yeah, I'm looking forward to trying this. And the NDA has just dropped, apparently, so I can stream it as well. Wow, okay. Yeah, very much looking forward to playing Soulframe. Haven't really seen much about the game. Initially, when I saw the trailer, I thought it was going to be like a full MMO, but it seems like it's more of an MMO light style game.
Go. You do this over and over and over again, with the primary motivation being power progression, as doing the aforementioned activities grants you experience, leveling up your character, your class, and your weapons, while you also accumulate resources and currency that are used for crafting new weapons and armor. That open world, come release, by the way, is going to be a shared space, from what I gather, where you will see other people running around. From what I understand, this should be along the lines of what they do in games like Destiny, where you will inhabit instances of these open world zones, and other players will be coming and going. And then, of course, you can group up with people, you can invite your friends, but yeah, you'll see other people in this shared
I think they had a similar thing in Warframe, right? They had like a zone where it was shared world, like a hub, and like an open world area. So I suppose they were experimenting with this in Warframe before before doing it in Soulframe. For me, I think whether or not this game's any good depends entirely on the combat.
Play space. And that's basically the gist of it. Even just this early iteration, I really like. I love the world, the lighting and environments look great. There's a lot of cool puzzles and secret rooms and mini games. NPCs in the game have a ton of character. I liked all of them, but my favorites were probably Verminia, the blacksmith, and then this little sprout creature, which is super cute. There are some early concerns, the number one of which is probably the combat. Definitely still needs a lot of work. It's quite floaty. It doesn't have a lot of impact to it. Enemies.
That's not a good early concern to have, is it? The combat. Of all the things you want to get right, that's the number one thing.
Barely react half the time that you hit them, so they need to really hone in and focus on improving this. The game was also incredibly easy with almost no challenge whatsoever. Pretty much everything was face roll, and there wasn't a ton of content, but you know, it's a pre-alpha build that I was playing, so I wasn't expecting that. That said, it's still very early days, and as a baseline, I really like this. I'm not even sure if they're going to be entering early access this year, but whenever this comes out, I am playing it 1000%. I already really enjoy the basic skeletal framework they have. I can't wait to see them flesh it out even more. Dune Awakening. I have talked about this game a lot. Maybe
I've been fading Doom Awakening for quite a while because I wasn't sure if this is a full MMO or not. Some people say it is a full MMO with like a massive open world. Some people say it's just a survival game like Conan Exiles. So I haven't really looked into it and I haven't really been getting hyped for it. Because in my mind, it's just like another Conan Exiles kind of game. It'll probably still be fun. I do like survival games, but I haven't really been like looking into it as an MMO. I might be wrong. It might surprise me. And with it being a sci-fi game, generally not as excited for sci-fi games because a lot of the gameplay is like shooting guns and stuff. Whereas I prefer more sword play.
Too much, but I don't care because despite any early concerns, I can't wait to play this. As a big fan of both survival games and MMOs, this is just right in my wheelhouse. And even if the combat is a janky mess like it might be, and the servers are a total disaster as they probably will be.
He says the combat's a janky mess. I hope not. I hope not. I really like Dune though. Like I enjoy the Dune universe. I enjoyed the movies. I think it's a cool theme for a game. I'd be more excited to play like a Dune game than some other random sci-fi game. At least Dune's a bit more grounded.
I'll be playing the hell out of this game when it comes out regardless. In fact, I'm so pumped. I can't believe it's just a couple months away. Now, if you somehow haven't seen any of my prior coverage, I will give you a basic rundown, but there are timestamps below if you're sick and tired of hearing me talk about this game. I totally understand, all right? So Dune Awakening. This is an open world sandbox survival crafting MMO. It's being developed by Funcom. They are quite clearly and admittedly building upon the foundation they laid with their prior survival game Conan Exiles, but
Funcom, what other MMOs did they make? They've made a few MMOs, right? I'm trying to remember. Conan. Oh, okay. I thought so. Yeah, Secret World. I thought it was Secret World, but I didn't want to say it. So Age of Conan and Secret World. Anarchy Online as well. Okay. So it kind of makes sense why the combat's a bit janky then.
New, improved, more MMO with more shared world spaces, specifically in the endgame, and obviously also set in the Dune universe. As for specifics, notable information includes the game's gonna have all of the basic survival crafting features and systems. You'll gather resources, make items, build a base, craft gear, get stronger, go explore enemy camps, and engage in PvP. That is the foundation. The explorable space consists of these two separate massive open zone regions.
That's pretty cool. That looks huge. That looks like a massive open world. The problem with the grand majority of MMOs is their endgame. God forbid someone makes an MMO where the endgame is not soul-sapping grind. Yeah, I agree with you there. I'm out here hyped for Title WoW's Unreal Engine 5 update in 2025. Interesting. I haven't heard of that.
First one, called Haga Basin, said to be larger than the entirety of their prior game, Conan Exiles, with somewhere around 100 hours worth of content to play through just in that one region. And then after that, when you progress into the end game, it's going to have you moving into the deep desert. And this is where all the late game progression comes into play, as well as the large scale PvP. In terms of
yeah, this is one thing I have heard about Dune Awakening, is that it apparently is massive, like really big world.
The type of stuff that you're going to do in the open world, they've got a variety of points of interest, public events, and content types. There's enemy strongholds, which are large, elaborate bases, camps, ruins, and such, full of enemy NPCs. You go in, you clear them out, you collect loot and resources. There are the desert testing stations, which is their take on public dungeons. These areas are mostly underground and can come in a variety of different biome types. These will be full of enemies, and some of which will also have a boss encounter at the end, although they have been clear that these aren't like traditional MMO dungeons, and they're more akin to something like shelters in Fallout or the dungeons in Skyrim. There's going to be a lot of narrative in here. You're going to find things like data pads and audio logs giving you detailed lore background to that area. And the bosses are just going to be like tougher variations of basic enemies rather than like bosses in a World of Warcraft dungeon, for example. We've got events such as these crashed ships where you're going to see a ship falling from the sky, crashing onto the planet. If you go over there, you can scavenge for its resources. There's this police force at night where the security ships will scan the planet looking for players. If you get spotted, they call troops to your location. There's the sandworm, which is an ever-present threat. If you spend too much time on the sand, if you make too many...
That's going to be the best thing, isn't it? Going through the desert and then seeing this giant epic sandworm pop out. I think that's going to be probably the most memorable part of playing the game, seeing this happen for the first time.
Too much vibration, the worm's gonna get summoned forward and chase you around, and it will kill you if it catches up to you. They got player hubs with these major towns that are full of vendors, quest NPCs, other players, as well as a marketplace where you can buy and sell items. And then the end game is that region of the deep desert, which is this massive expansive zone made up mostly...
Wow, what is this? This looks bloody epic. He's just scouted a giant explosion from miles away.
Of sand, but with rock islands dotted all throughout. Guilds of players will be headed here in search of large quantities of
Spice Blow. That looks fucking cool, to be fair. I love spectacle events in MMOs where you can see something massive in the distance and it makes you want to go there. I just love that kind of thing. That's very cool. Forces PvP. Okay.
Resource and currency for the endgame crafting and progression. And then in that region is where this large-scale PvP conflict will take place, what they have referred to as Combined Arms, which is like sort of like a battlefield or planet-side experience where you've got tons of players all mixed in a variety of combat with ranged and melee weapons. There'll be ground and air vehicles, artillery, that whole thing, just big-scale chaos. Again, think battlefield or planet-side.
By tons of players, do you guys know any more information on that? Like, I hope it's not like 100 players per server, like a lot of survival games. I hope it's like more than that. 1k on a server. Okay. I mean, if it's 1k per server or more, then that's like similar to New World, basically. We can call that an MMO. Like, it annoys me when you get survival games where it's literally max server cap is 100 per server, and then they try and call it an MMO. If it's 1,000, okay.
That's what they're saying they're going to deliver on with the big group PvP in the end game. And that is the basic rundown of the game's combat and features. Now, like I said, survival game plus MMO in a shared world. Two of my favorite genres smashed into one. I'm just so pumped for this. Now, if you hated Conan Exiles, if you think that is a garbage game, you're probably best on avoiding this. But for me, I'm really excited to dive in. Also, this is like the only game on this in this video with a set release date, as Dune Awakening is set to launch in May 20th, 2025.
Oh, that's really soon. May 20th, that's like almost 2 months' time. I'm actually quite excited for this one. I'll link it after I finish.
Maybe I'll see you there. Another MMO light that I wanted to talk about, and I'll admit that I might be pushing the boundaries, including this here, but I want to mention Light No Fire. Yeah, here's the thing. They're promising a massive, true-to-life, real-world size planet in a fantasy setting with other players inhabiting that same space, which is all very cool in theory. Of course, this comes with a disclaimer.
I saw this trailer, and this trailer looks absolutely unbelievable. But then again, it's Hello Games, and they know how to make damn good trailers. I remember the first ever No Man's Sky trailer that had people losing their minds. So I'm looking forward to this. Hello Games really turned their reputation around. They fixed No Man's Sky. People love the game now. They've got a lot more experience, so maybe they can deliver on this crazy ambitious project they're working on.
that, hey, Hello Games' last title did not fully deliver on all of their pre-release promises, but also they've got over 7 years of consistent free updates that they've added to that game to the point where it is widely considered quite good. No Man's Sky is one of those titles that's like quietly super popular with a large dedicated fan base, and they seem to be doing very well for themselves. So as for details here about Light No Fire, they said it's more ambitious than No Man's Sky, despite taking place on a single planet. Their goal
more ambitious than No Man's Sky. Okay. That's going to be mad.
Was to deliver a lot.
I mean, if this is in-game footage, it looks pretty good.
A lot more depth and detail in that explorable space, and say it should feel less shallow. They claim to have built a game that is Earth-sized, an entire planet with a lot of various places to visit, mile-high mountains from on the top of which you're going to see rivers, canyons, oceans, and continents beyond, all of which can be traversed to and explored. Sean called Light No Fire the first
All these little rabbit humanoids. Oh no, it's a fur. It was going so well, and now it's a furry game. Oh well. I hope the combat's good. Wait, our character's also a furry. Our character's also a bunny. Okay, maybe you can choose to be like an alien race or something.
Quote, real open world, something without boundaries, with us getting some glimpses of that in the trailer. It was also said that they're going to let everyone play together, alluding to this being a big shared space, but because it's so big, you're not actually likely to see everybody. You will.
That sounds familiar. It's so big that you're not going to see anyone. Huh.
Come across other people. Now, they also promised that in No Man's Sky and weren't able to deliver on it at launch, but it is now the case that you regularly see other people in that game. So I'm fairly confident that they are actually going to do what they say they're doing here. And then finally, they say they want to bring the depth of a role-playing game to the freedom of a survival sandbox with Light No Fire. And while the focus of the reveal centers on the scope of the planet, the final game is going to have a lot more traditional RPG features with character creation, going through a sprawling fantasy story, a lot of gear and progression systems, a large variety of enemies, bosses, and so on. Now, I know I'm not alone in thinking this could be something special. I think probably my biggest hope, though, is that they can really have a lot more depth and way more interesting combat than No Man's Sky had. And
yeah, that's the big concern. I don't know if they've ever like made a game with amazing combat. Isn't No Man's Sky combat just zapping things with lasers? I haven't played it for years, so I might be wrong, but I think that's basically what it is, right? The combat needs to be good, and my question would be, if they're making an Earth-size procedural generated world, what does the gameplay loop consist of? Is it just going to be a pure sandbox like PAX Day where the goal is make a base? That's the question.
And if they can deliver on that in this fantasy shared world that they're pitching, I mean, it could be unreal. Now, Light No Fire doesn't have a release date at the moment, maybe late 2025, but I'm guessing it'll be sometime in 2026 at the earliest. Now, beyond those games, reality is at the moment, my largest hope for a new great, like traditional MMORPG mostly comes from games that are way far off and we know little to nothing about. Of course, that list includes the League of Legends based MMO coming from Riot, the ZeniMax Online Studios, they have a new IP, the same developers of ESO. There's that new...
Oh, really? I haven't heard of that. A new ZeniMax MMO. That's interesting. I'd like to hear more information about that. That's the first I've heard about that. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the Riot MMO. I think everyone is. But that's going to be a long way off because we haven't seen any footage, screenshots, or info about it. Hopefully, with the Riot MMO, I hope they just keep it quiet. And then we only hear about it when it's like 2 years out from a full release. That would probably be for the best. New ZeniMax MMO is supposed to be some new Star Wars. Interesting.
Ghost MMO from Ghostcrawler, and then Sony reportedly still has one of their 2 Horizon MMOs in development, one of which was canceled, but apparently the second one is still coming from Guerrilla, as far as we know. And the reason for my interest in these games is that they have the financial backing and the development studios likely required to even take a crack at breaking into the genre's top 10 list. And so I'm hoping that one of, if not all of them, actually deliver. But again, the fact is, we pretty much know nothing about any of these these games other than that they exist and they're in development, let alone have a clear picture or expectations for how good or not.
Same for that supposed Lord of the Rings MMO. Apparently there's a Lord of the Rings MMO in development as well. I wonder if he mentions that as well.
They're going to be. So really, it's just wishful thinking at this point. Now, there are way more MMOs on the horizon than what is covered in this video. But to be frank, I just don't have a large degree of hope for most of them, in the sense that I don't see them having the sort of staying power any of the genre's current heavy hitters have. Although I would love to be wrong, genuinely. Like, just take a look at my yearly list video for every upcoming MMO, and you're gonna see 30 plus games that are currently in development set to release in like the next 5 or so years. Maybe a few of them exceed my expectations for both my personal enjoyment, but also in terms of large scale success.
It's funny though, whenever you make an upcoming MMOs video, I bet Force has realized this over the years as well. Whenever I've done it, this has always happened. You'll like make a list of videos, upcoming MMOs 2025, upcoming MMOs 2026. Half of those games will not fucking release on the year that they're supposed to, that they're supposedly coming out. It's been like that for the past 6 years that I've been making those kind of videos, and I feel like a donkey for doing them. Like, every time I make one of those videos, I'm like, for fuck's sake, is it really going to come out on the day they're saying? Probably not. Like, it happened recently with Arcade Chronicles, right? I made a video a few months ago. It's like, okay, this game's going to come out in 2025. Literally a month after I released that video, they pushed it back to 2026. And it'll probably get pushed back even further to 2027, most likely. It's just how it is with MMOs.
I hope so. In fact, I'll say that there is inevitably going to be some MMOs launching in the next 3, 5 to 10 years that do catch fire, and that is something that I entirely welcome. In fact, I'm praying that happens. But as of now, the games I'm most interested in and excited about, yeah, it's pretty much Ashes of Creation, Arcade Chronicles, and Chrono Odyssey as for the traditional MMOs,
Same.
then followed by those MMO Lights or Shared World bunch, which includes Soulframe, Dune Awakening, and Light No Fire on the list. And then a lot of my hope for those bigger budget games are the ones we know nothing about. That Riot League MMO, the new IP from ZeniMax Online, Ghost MMO, and then Sony's Horizon MMO if they...
I said this not too long ago, but with the MMO audience, the more you know about an MMO, the less hyped for it you are. So if you've already got the funding and you've already got the budget and you don't really care too much about community feedback, the best thing you can do for like marketing and hype is to not tell anyone anything about your MMO, and people's imaginations will just run away. Like that's kind of how it is with the Riot MMO, I think.
They don't cancel it in the next year. Though I will add one final note. My pipe dream that I mentioned in the recent Monster Hunter Wilds review is that I would just lose my mind if we ever got an MMO version of that sort of game. Imagine the depth of the combat system and the boss fights in a Monster Hunter game, but in a fully seamless open world with other players and things like dungeons and raids and enemy camps that you go after. Like, it would be so cool. Or even just like an MMO version of a game like Elden Ring. My God, I would lose my mind. The premise is so appealing to me. I just don't know if it's like technically feasible. At least no one's delivered on that sort of a concept as of today. Well, that does it for this video.
Yeah, that would be interesting. What do you guys think if there was like a Monster Hunter style MMO? I think it'd be cool. I don't know if it would work. It would work from a PvE point of view, but I don't think it would work too well for PvP, and I don't think you could do large scale.
Look at the upcoming MMOs that I'm actually excited for. If you think I shortchanged any game, any upcoming MMO or shared world game that you are personally very interested in, an upcoming MMO that you think deserves to be on this list, tell me why below, because I am all for getting hyped and excited for something new. So let me know if I miss something that you think deserves to be here. But that just about does it for today. Thank you as always. Hope you enjoyed the video. See y'all next time. Take care.
That was a very good video from Force. Let's link it in the chat. Give it a like. Brilliant MMO content creator. Force is one of my favorite MMO channels, actually. And I really like his monthly update videos, like what games to play each month. I watch them like every month to basically like give me an idea of what's coming. But yeah, Good video. It seems like we're basically excited for the same games. Ashes of Creation, Chrono Odyssey, Arcade Chronicles. We probably have fairly similar tastes in MMOs. Yeah, good video.